Otsu, Omi, Japan. The second year of Kanen, in the reign of the Emperor Momozono Tenno. A hot, damp summer's night. Maruyama Okyo opened his eyes from a fitful sleep and beheld a dead woman. She was young, beautiful and pale, unnaturally drained of color. Her bloodless skin peeked from her loose, bone-white burial kimono. Her bleached appearance was contrasted only by the thin slits of her black eyes, and by the long, black hair that hung disheveled across her shoulders. She had no feet, but her face was calm, soothing. There was nothing in her eyes to make the 17-year-old Okyo apprehensive. The dead woman watched him a moment, and then disappeared. An artist by training and nature, Okyo sprang from his futon, grabbed his brushes and a nearby roll of silk, and mustered all of his skill to capture the apparition exactly as she had appeared before him, his lover, Oyuki. This painting shows a pale woman clad in white, her hair disheveled, running down her back, as she wears a white kimono, a burial kimono worn by a dead person. Her face with an expression of a half smile under hard eyes. Her body, as you go down, dissolves into nothingness. This is a painting of Oyuki by a well-known artist during the Edo period, Maruyama Okyo, painted in 1750. Founder of the Maruyama School of Painting, Maruyama Okyo was the ultimate naturalist painter and really likes to paint something from a direct observations. Most of his paintings are something that he has seen before in his life. So, according to the legend, one night Okyo was visited by his dead mistress Oyuki. Oyuki was a geisha who died young, and Okyo mourned her passing. She appears before Okyo in the middle of the night, standing before him while he is lying in his futon. She looked at him with contented yet longing eyes. Then she disappeared. After the apparition disappears, Okyo sprang from his futon, grabbed his painting tools and immediately painted her image. And the painting is said to be the exact copy of what he saw that night. This painting is said to be so realistic that there is a legend of the original painting, where the ghost comes to life late at night. Whether it is because of his emotions for his lost love or his desperate longing to meet her lover again, the spirit of Oyuki paid her still living lover a visit, and there is no hostility at all in the ordeal, just a reunion of two lovers, one from our world and the other from the beyond. And because of this otherworldly visit, Okyo painted this painting. And because of the painting, the Japanese ghosts that we know and love or even scared of today exist. When Okyo created the painting, he had accidentally created the very first Yūrei, or the picture of ghost, and had given Japan what the spirits of the dead looked like. Oyuki is the great-grandma of Edo period ghosts such as Oiwa, Otsuyu and Okiku, which we later will talk about, and modern popular J-horror film ghosts such as Sadako and Kayako. Who knew that just from a single ghostly encounter could bring so much impact in the world up until today? This video is a deep dive into Japanese ghost or Yūrei, and I will be explaining about the origin of Yūrei, the storytelling forms that evolved through time, and how and why it is the way it is. If you want to know what this triangle thing is, why Yūrei wears all white, the supposedly cursed 100 Ghost Stories game, and the ghostly Kabuki theaters, stick around. But if you are here for only Yūrei stories, you can go to this timestamp over here where the list starts. What makes ghosts scary is their horrifying appearance, of course. But what makes ghosts scary and intriguing and exciting are the stories. A story is the main conduit for ghosts. Through stories, they invade people's mind. Their imagination conjure up the most grotesque creatures imaginable, making their hearts beat faster, giving them chills down their spine when listening to stories of supposedly real encounters with ghosts. Even though these stories are scary, it does invoke a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity within us. It also gives us a sense of pride when our spooky stories make our friends scared. Thus, with all of these senses, people start to delve deeper. They start to use their creativity to create new stories or change existing stories to fit their needs, I suppose. They will socialize more. They will explore abandoned places, talk to old folks about old forgotten ghost stories. And through storytelling, ghosts are immortalized. Today, we have many forms of storytelling such as movies, novels, comics, manga, and many more. In Japan, one of the earliest texts, the Kojiki, or the Records of Ancient Matters, a text that concerns itself with the creation myth of Japan, origins of gods and monsters, includes the earliest version of a vengeful or restless spirit, a proto-Yūrei, if you will. Folklores and legends were passed down orally, not until the Heian period, where scholars started to record and compile these folk stories into multi-volume texts. At first, they had Setsuwa, a Buddhist parable collection used as a teaching tool about the laws of karmic causality and Buddhist teachings. The first Setsuwa is called the Nihon Ryoki, or the Japanese Chronicle of Miracles, written somewhere between 787 and 824. It was known for collecting local stories and legends of the supernatural coupled together with Buddhist teachings, with story titles such as of an evil daughter who lacked filial respect for her mother and got immediate penalty of a violent death. So yeah, long isekai light novel titles are not a new thing in Japan, it seems. In 1120, we have Hyaku Monogari, or the collected tales of times now past, which collected over 1,000 folklore and legend, spanning for about 33 volumes. And it is not until the Edo period that the very well-known short story genre called kaidan, or strange tales, began to take form. As the name suggests, these stories are explicitly of supernatural and horror nature. Yūrei that exist in these early stories are more fluid and undefined in terms of their appearance. It was not until 1750, after the Okyo's painting of Oyuki, which we talked about earlier, that a template of how a ghost should look like started to be used. One famous and supposedly cursed game is the Hyaku Monogari, or the 100 Tales game. This game is traditionally played during the summer month, where it is said that the summer season is when ghosts and demons are at their peak of power, I suppose. It was a well-known game and a form of story sharing during the Edo period. It is believed that this game is inspired by the tales of Hyakki-Yagyo, or the 100 Demons Night Parade, where hundreds of supernatural entities invade Kyoto late summer night during the Heian period. So I'm going to show you step by step on how to play this game. Step 1. Gather a group of at least 3 and preferably more people, because you are going to be telling a lot of stories here. Wait for a night of the full moon. Assemble at the home of one of the participants. Prepare a space consisting of at least 2 rooms, in the one furthest from the room in which the group is assembled. Arrange 100 lanterns lit by candles. Lanterns should preferably use blue tissue paper rather than the standard white. In the center, place a table, and atop the table, a mirror. Remember to pick your tales ahead of time. Traditionally, the stories told at Hyaku Monogatari sessions involve not ghost stories but tales of strange or odd happenings. So yeah, any form of spooky tale will suffice. Also, it is important to choose stories of a reasonable length. Each participant will only have an average of just 5 minutes to tell a tale. And think about it, 5 minutes times 100 equals more than 8 hours. This sort of entertainment hails from a slower era and demands serious concentration and endurance. And after that, after each tale is told, the teller rises and goes into the room with the lanterns. After extinguishing a lantern, they must gaze at themselves in the mirror and return to the storytelling room. As you progress through the game, the room gets darker and darker. And as the last story was told and the candle extinguished, the room gets dark because there's no light anymore. So as the game progresses, the room becomes darker and darker and tension between the players grow. It is said that the game is cursed. It serves as an invocation to summon evil spirits to the place where the game was played, and it is said that when the last candle is extinguished, a Yūrei will take shape inside the room. This game, cursed or not, was a very effective way for Japanese people to exchange Yūrei stories, come up with new ones or modify the old ones, thus immortalizing these ghastly specters in their culture. Kabuki, a theater genre that rose and ruled the entertainment industry of Edo period Japan, with its impressive and engaging theatrics accompanied with state-of-the-art awesome practical effects, done live in front of the audience. Kabuki theater was celebrated and became a sensation in Edo period Japan, with Kabuki actors becoming very well-known celebrities, and people would be eager to see the next play, and to see their favorite actors in action on stage. When talking about Japanese Yūrei, one must not ignore the impact of Kabuki theater on the subject. Kabuki theaters are different and should not be confused with No theater. No theater catered more towards the aristocrats, samurais, noblemen and women. No plays are more ethereal, spiritual, and they delve in deeper, more sophisticated subjects. While Kabuki is catered more towards commoners, with that the plays and the stories are more grounded, dramatic and gritty. In an era of peace, people want something that is thrilling and something to bring them a bit on the edge. This is where Kabuki directors started to adapt old written folklore and legends that are rich with the supernatural and Yūrei into plays. The first Yūrei to ever grace the Kabuki stage is the ghost of a courtesan who haunts the protagonist in the play called The Courtesan Asama Dake. 46 years later, in 1744, Japan saw the first performance of Momo Chidori Musume Dojoji, the daughter of numerous birds at the Dojo Temple, an adaptation on the Dojoji Temple legend. The story follows a daughter of a feudal lord who falls in love with a handsome young priest who visits the lord's mansion every year in his annual pilgrimage. However, when the young priest finds out that the lord's daughter is madly in love with him, he refuses her advances and instinctively flees the mansion. The daughter, overcomes with passion and lust, pursues the priest. In her pursuit, she transforms into a horrifying serpent. The priest arrived at Dojoji Temple and asked the local monks there to help him hide before she arrived. The monks there helped him hide inside the Dojoji Temple bell. However, it was all in vain as the serpent knew exactly where the priest hid. She, with her serpentine body wrapped around the bell, her passion and love were so hot that she melted down the bell and the priest inside. This play was a massive success and shows a right direction for the Kabuki industry to further explore. Ghostly and weird tales were what audiences want. It was not until the legendary Kabuki director by the name Suraya Nanboku IV and actor Onoe Matsusuke I changed the landscape of Kabuki, introducing spectacular visions of gore and ghostly vengeance. They also brought a new genre of Kabuki play with them called Kaidan Mono. More about the director later. Now, let us move on to the appearance of Yūrei. The appearance of Japanese ghosts we now know were mostly thanks to Kabuki theater's creativity and attention to detail. The painting of Oyuki by now has become the accepted image of a Yūrei, so actors took inspiration from this painting and it eventually became a template for Yūrei portrayals. Thanks to both the painting and Kabuki, Yūreis are typically depicted as wearing an all-white attire, a white kimono draped and covering the Yūrei's entire visible half of their body. This white kimono is called kyokatabira, a special white kimono reserved only for the dead. A lot of people think that the white is the color of death. However, that is not the case. White symbolizes purity. That is the reason we see Shinto priests and shrine maidens wear white. And the reason why a dead person is wearing an all-white outfit is to signify those who have been ritually purified, who are free from the stain of things of this world. Dead bodies are inherently tainted and cannot be brought into the presence of kami unless they are purified. So there are two ways to clear this taint: by washing with water and the color white itself. The dead person's kimono is worn with the right side crossed over the left, reversed from normal people that wear the left side across over the right. There is not much of an explanation why this is a tradition, but some speculate that this tradition is based on the belief that everything in the world of the dead is reversed from ours. Another peculiar thing about Yūrei is this triangle headwear. There are many names for this thing. The Tankan, meaning heaven's crown. Sometimes it is called simply as Zukin, meaning hood or kerchief. And sometimes it is called Sankaku no Shiroi Boshi, which means white triangle head. Again, the meaning of this head is difficult to pinpoint, but some theories suggest that it is used to ward off evil spirits that is trying to possess the now empty body, while other theories suggest that it is a way to show their new status as one with the gods, hence the name Heaven's Crown. Later, I will explain why the dead are so respected and worshipped in Japanese culture. In Kabuki, the makeup that actors wear is called kumadori. This makeup is very important because it lets the actors convey what kind of character they are playing to the audience. It helps the audience to differentiate between characters, and it helps the audience, especially audiences that sit far from the stage, to see what is going on stage. The kumadori styles are different with each character. Samurai characters have a sterner or sometimes rage-filled expressions, and so on. The actors created unique makeup to portray the undead. The makeup is called aiguma. Face white as a bone, lips black or dark blue, and heavy shadowing around the eyes. The eyebrows are high up on the head, and their eyes are often surrounded by black circles. This gives off a very ghastly and wild appearance. This face combined with the all-white kimono is a stark difference with the rest of the cast, which are wearing colorful clothing and face paint, which adds more to the dreadful and ominous factor of Yūrei in Kabuki. And thanks to that, hundreds and thousands of Yūrei portrayals follow the same path that the Kabuki paved. Best example is from the movie Ju-on. Long hair, especially long women's hair, has something of a supernatural property believed back in ancient Japan. A woman with long, loose, hanging hair is quite unsettling, and a woman with super long, super loose hair is double the disturbing factor. So the actors used this opportunity to further push Yurei's ghastly aura. Actors who would become Yūrei would wear horrifying wigs, with shocks of hair sticking from all sides and hanging straight down the shoulder and back. The wig sometimes has inhuman length of hair, to drive home the otherworldly aesthetics of a Yūrei. When you watch the anime Yuna and the Haunted Hot Spring, like the degenerate you are, you might be wondering what the hell is this fiery orb following her. Well, my fellow wonderful viewers, they are called Hitodama. A Hitodama is basically a human soul wandering the living world in the form of a fireball. This also has roots in Kabuki theater. Actors will use a fire manipulation technique by using fire to create an illusion that the Yūrei character has no feet and is floating. Small fire pits are used where it is tied to something like a fishing pole, and this pole accompanies the Yūrei actor. The fire above the actor's head illuminates the dark theater. Because the theater is dark, the fire pots which light up the actor from above creates an illusion of a floating Yūrei. With more ghost plays, stories being told, and more exposure about the supernatural was given to the people of Edo, Japan, they slowly grew desensitized by the tame Yūrei stories and depictions. They demand more shocking, gruesome stories and ghosts. So, with time, we see ghost portrayals evolved from the beautiful and peaceful Oyuki. The ghost became more ghastly, hideous, and terrifying. But now I seem to have noticed a reverse effect of sorts, where Japanese ghosts goes from hideous and terrifying to becoming sexually arousing and busty, reflecting the horny era of our modern age, where people would rather fantasizing about fucking ghosts and monsters than having a normal relationship. Japan is probably the most haunted country in the world, housing over 8 million spirits known as kami. Japan's native religion, the Shinto, which means the way of the gods, is a religion that was built upon spirit worship. The pacifying of the soul of the dead, spirit ancestor worship, and animism all join hands, becoming the pillars of Shinto religion. Spirit or ghosts are not always seen as unwanted entities waiting to be exorcised, but instead they are welcomed. You see, thanks to Shintoism, the Japanese have a unique relationship with the spirits of the dead, a symbiotic relationship where the living people pray and worship their dead ancestors' spirit, and in return, the spirits of their ancestor will be their guardian and bring good luck and prosperity to their lives. However, if a family fails to appease their ancestors' spirit, bad luck and disaster will fall upon them, where the spirit becomes wrathful by the betrayal. Dead spirits are considered lesser gods, as when a person dies, their Raikon or spirit breaks free from their mortal shell and pretty much ascends to a higher being, a guardian spirit, or a kami. The most famous ancestor worship ritual is the Obon festival, an important holiday for Japan, where it is said that during the day of the Obon festival, the wall between the living and the dead grows thin. The spirit of the dead ancestors are welcomed back to their family's home. The living will go and clean their ancestors' grave, and feasts will be held to celebrate the return of their ancestors. These are regarding the peaceful dead, people who died without any regrets or attachment to the world of the living. They die peacefully and their spirits can move on. These are what people say the lucky ones. However, it is hard to leave this world peacefully. Oftentimes, people die suddenly without any signs at all. Attachment to the world of the living, whether it is money or family, strong emotions before death, will result in a restless spirit. Strong emotions such as hate and resentment will lead one's spirit to be bound to earth. With anger so strong, the spirit exacts revenge on the person who wronged them from beyond the grave. Anger is not the only emotion. Love can also lead to a spirit bound to the living world. These spirits are bound because of their desires. However, when their desires are fulfilled, their souls will finally rest. These spirits are called Yūrei, the Japanese ghosts. To avoid confusion, Oyuki is not the first Yūrei. She is the first ghostly entity in Japan which was depicted in this manner, which sets an important template of how a Yūrei would look like ever since. But the existence of Yūrei has been around way longer. Possibly the oldest text from Japan, the Kojiki, or Records of Ancient Matters, written in 712, contains the creation myth of Japan. In the early part of the myth, it tells a story of two primordial gods of creation, Izanagi and his sister wife Izanami. After their descent to earth, they began to get busy. From their union, Izanami gave birth to several islands, which will become the chain of islands that forms Japan. After this, Izanami produced more offspring, more islands and deities. However, when it comes to giving birth to Kagu-suchi, the fire deity, her body was badly burned and damaged, resulting in her death. Izanagi was grieving his wife's death. His grief was so great that he undertook a journey to Yomi, the Japanese underworld that is really dark, to meet his dead wife again. In his search in the dark, he met his dead wife. There, he begs Izanami to return back with him to the world of the living. However, this is no longer possible, as Izanami has already eaten a fruit from the world of the dead, and this means that she is no longer possible to return to the world of the living and is eternally bound to the underworld. However, Izanami would try to ask for permission to visit her husband. She asked Izanagi to wait for her answer, while making him promise to not bring any light into the underworld. Izanagi waited and he grew impatient. He decided to enter the palace of the dead and transform his comb into a torch to light up the dark underworld. The flashes of light hit Izanami, and Izanagi was horrified to see the current condition of Izanami. Her body is like a corpse, rotten with maggots crawling out of her skin. Terrified, Izanagi instinctively started to run away. Izanami, disappointed and enraged by her husband breaking their promise, Izanami ordered her demon servants to pursue and capture Izanagi. However, Izanagi was able to escape, and he managed to seal the entrance to Yomi with a huge boulder, trapping Izanami in Yomi for eternity. Izanami is what people would consider a proto-Yūrei. Her story has numerous similarities with later vengeance-seeking Yūrei from beyond the grave. Although Izanami is not explicitly a ghost, her nature of being from the dead kinda makes her one. And also I would like to add, after Izanagi's successful escape, he performs a cleansing ritual to cleanse himself from any bad juju that sticks to him after his meeting with his dead wife. This ritualistic cleansing is said to be the origin of Harai, purification rituals performed at Shinto shrines in Shinto religion, where shrine goers wash themselves with water before entering the sacred space. Let us start the real Yūrei list by talking about the 3 Yūrei of Japan, the big 3 Yūrei of Japan, the most famous and feared Yūrei in the country. From these 3, we can then explore different branches or types of Yūrei. I am going to make these 3 as the anchor of the main types that we will be diving deeper later. Oiwa. As I mentioned earlier, Yūrei was born from strong emotions that a person has in their final moments. What stronger emotions are there other than hate? Hate is, I would say, an emotion of evil. Hate makes someone murderous, makes someone do nasty things. However, it is also can be understood that when the emotion of hate is justifiable. Oiwa is the ghost of hate, or the specific name for this type of Yūrei or ghost is called Onryo. And in Oiwa's story, despite her Yūrei being full of hate and malice, we as a reader or listener or the audience root for her, because her hate is totally understandable. The most famous and influential Yūrei of Japan, she is the template of modern horror movie ghosts, horrifying face, clad in white and vengeance-seeking. The essential ghost of hate. Oiwa is a character from a story called Yotsuya Kaidan, originally a Kabuki play written in 1825 and directed by Soraya Nanboku IV. Here he is again. This is the guy or the director that I mentioned earlier in this video. So, this director, he was inspired by real-life murder cases that happened during the Edo period. One such case was a husband who murdered his wife because his wife cheated on him. Something like that. And this is how the Yotsuya Kaidan or the story of Oiwa goes. Oiwa is a loving wife. She and her husband Iemon lived in poverty, selling paper umbrellas. Safe to say their business isn't booming and they had to survive on what little profit that they got. But nevertheless, she is content and grateful to be living with her husband, never complaining. However, the same could not be said to Iemon, a Ronin. His glory days as a samurai were long gone, and the lavish life that he had dreamt was not meant to be. And on top of that, Oiwa is sick, and after giving birth to their child, means there's another mouth to feed. He hates his life, and because of this, he wastes away drinking and mingling with other Ronins. Despite being a sleazy dude, a granddaughter from a wealthy neighboring family fell in love with Iemon, despite knowing that he is a married man. Her name is Ome. So Iemon and Ome started to know each other, and soon after he fell in love with her as well. Seeing this situation, Iemon finds this to be the perfect opportunity for him to have a better life. Because Ome is from a rich family, she herself is young and beautiful. All the things that he ever wanted in life is right there in front of him. Now, all that is left is to get rid of Oiwa. So he decided to purchase poison and secretly administered it to his wife. However, Iemon was no doctor or chemist, so he did not know the correct amount to put. And what he put was not enough to kill her, but instead melted one side of her face. Weirdly enough, Oiwa did not seem to notice the change happening to her face. Not until one time when she decided to comb her hair. As she stroked her comb across her scalp, a painful sensation filled her scalp area. And when she looked at her comb, clumps of hair and skin were brushed off. Horrified, she took a mirror and saw what had happened to her face. She broke down and cried. Coincidentally, at the same time, one of Iemon's friends was sneaking into their house. He was paid by Iemon to rape Oiwa, so that when Iemon comes, he can frame Oiwa of infidelity. However, when his friend sneaked up and saw the current situation of Oiwa, he did not have the guts to do the deed and came clean, confessing to her what is really happening behind her back. Understandably, she was furious, heartbroken, betrayed, and hideous looking. She decided to end herself and their baby there, stating that to leave an innocent child under such a cruel man is a cruel act by itself. Her last breath cursing Iemon. Iemon came back to their house. Seeing that she is dead, he counts this as a win. He was overjoyed that his plan was a success, and he can now continue with his marriage to Ome. And he also killed the friend that he paid to Oiwa, because he doesn't want any eyewitness of the crime. And also he planned this out because he wants to make it as Oiwa having this secret relationship with his friend, and they both did some sort of love suicide. So after murdering his friend, he disposed their body by nailing Oiwa and the friend to a door frame and dumping them into a river. After this, he thought everything was going well for him. Little did he know that her anger, hatred, and resentment turned her spirit to a very dangerous Onryo. During the wedding day, as Iemon raised the veil of Ome, he was greeted by the hideous face of Oiwa. Startled, he lashes out his sword at her, only to find out that he had killed his newlywed wife. Seeing what he had done, he fled away, and the ghost of Oiwa chased after him. She manifested in every corner of the city, showing her face through windows on dark alleys, and one famous painting of her manifestation was her manifestation as a paper lantern. So yeah, everywhere Iemon goes, the face of Oiwa surely will pop up to torment him. His sanity began to slip away and he became unhinged. He fled and fled until he sought refuge at a temple called Snake Temple. Even here, he could not run away from Oiwa's psycho torture. He wanted to kill himself, but he found out that his blade could not penetrate his stomach, as if Oiwa really wants to torture him as long as possible. During his refuge, when he was hungry, he wanted to fish at the nearby river, and every time he caught something, he reeled up the rotting body of Oiwa from the river. Alas, after much torture and hideous manifestations, Iemon went crazy and Oiwa finally let him kill himself. So there was the story of the most famous and feared Yūrei from Japan. The Kabuki play was a success and many iterations were made. Also, several film adaptations were done of this story. Not only that, Oiwa proved to be one of the most influential ghosts in history. However, the question is she real? Well, there are claims of Oiwa being a real person. The Tamiya Inari Shrine is said to be the resting place for Oiwa, although there is another temple called Myokoji that is said to have been the real resting place of Oiwa. Yet, if you go to the Tamiya Inari Shrine, you can read the sign here stating that the real-life Oiwa-san lived a normal happy life with her husband. Their marriage was enjoyable and I will assume she died peacefully. And also the Yotsuya Kaidan story was written 200 years after the real Oiwa's death. Oiwa is the best example of our first main Yūrei archetype that we are going to discuss, Onryo. Onryo is the face of every horror flick, not only from Japan but all around the world. The popular and still loved trope when it comes to depicting ghosts in movies. Onryo takes the kanji on, meaning grudge, and ryo, meaning spirit. These are the vengeance-seeking, grudge-filled ghosts hell-bent on getting their revenge on the living. Hate is a strong emotion a person can have. Hate fills your heart with negativity, makes your head shrouded in this black cloud so that you cannot think clearly. It drives evil and malicious acts. Hate is the opposite of love after all. So when a person dies in a state such as being murdered, betrayed, or cast aside, In their last moments, what they felt must have been anger, confusion, hate, regret, and sadness. These swirls of emotions are what the Japanese call onnen. Onnen is a grudge or hatred so powerful that it takes a life of its own and capable of exerting their influence on the physical world. Onnen during moments of death will cause their spirit to become Onryo. Like we mentioned before, when a person dies, it is believed that their spirit or Raikon will ascend to a higher plane, becoming a lesser god. That is what the Japanese people believed. These lesser gods have supernatural abilities. Although they are no gods yet, Onryo also boasts impressive sets of supernatural powers. Normal ghosts typically haunt specific areas, usually the area or place where they died. Onryo, however, is like guided missiles. They will seek their target to the ends of the earth, and will do everything that they have in their supernatural arsenal to exact revenge on their target. In more extreme cases, an Onryo can direct her or his hatred towards a group of people, a village, a town, and the most extreme of all, throughout the country, putting innocent lives in danger as well. But at the end of the day, Onryo does not care. It only cares in its vengeance. Otsuyu, from the story Botandoro, or the Tale of Peony Lantern. The story follows a daughter of a samurai, Otsuyu, who met and fell in love with a ronin, Shinsaburo. Otsuyu also was love at first sight for Shinsaburo, so they meet every day in secret. Because, of course, Otsuyu's father, who is a samurai, will never approve of a daughter's relationship with a lowly ronin. Their daily rendezvous was becoming a bit problematic for Otsuyu's family, so one of the family's servants decided to spread lies between both of them. The servant tells Otsuyu that Shinsaburo had died due to an accident. Then the servant tells Shinsaburo that Otsuyu had died due to illness. This upset and broke the hearts of the couple. Shinsaburo's grief knows no bounds, as he laments every day, and his way of coping was that he made a shrine dedicated to Otsuyu and prayed to it every day. Otsuyu's sadness was also endless. Her broken heart was too much for her, and soon after she died. For real this time. Otsuyu's death led to one of Otsuyu's loyal servants, Oyome, to die of depression and heartbreak as well, because of her master's death. Several months passed, and one night, while Shinsaburo was lamenting her lover, he heard the clack of Geta shoes in front of his house. He slid the door, and there she is, Otsuyu, still alive and well, accompanied by her loyal servant Oyome, carrying a lantern with the shape of peony flower. Shinsaburo was surprised, so was Otsuyu. They had a long talk, and they did other adult-oriented things. While they were enjoying each other's company, they understood that someone must have spread lies between them so that they don't meet each other again. And at that night, they swore to each other to only meet at night and at Shinsaburo's house. So that was what they did. Every night, Otsuyu visits Shinsaburo, and always early in the morning she leaves. Their nightly visits grew a bit louder, if you know what I mean. This made Shinsaburo's neighbor grew a bit curious, and he tried to peek inside Shinsaburo's house to see what was going on. What he saw made his hair stand on end. He saw Shinsaburo embracing and making love to a rotten corpse, while another corpse can be seen at the corner holding the peony lantern. The next day, the neighbor confronts Shinsaburo about what he saw last night. Of course, Shinsaburo denies such abhorrent accusations, stating that Otsuyu is a normal and still much alive woman, that the neighbor was drunk. But the neighbor implored him to look for Otsuyu during the daytime. After much thinking, he went to the town where Otsuyu claims to live. He searched everywhere and asked everyone, but no one is familiar with a young girl named Otsuyu that is still alive. He was starting to get more nervous. He decided to check the graveyard, and there he met her. Her grave, I mean. And at the grave hangs the very same peony lantern that Otsuyu's servant carries with her. Chill ran through his spine as he hurried to a local temple. He consulted a priest there about his situation. Then the priest prescribed Ofuda slips for him to stick to every opening of his house. He did what was told by the priest, and when night came, he can hear Otsuyu's cries from outside the house, begging him to let her in. Night after night, he hears her lover's heartbroken cries, and at one point he could not bear the guilt anymore, and he ripped out the Ofuda slips, letting Otsuyu in. The next morning, the locals found his body, snuggling with a rotting corpse, but despite the disturbing scene, his face was filled with joy, possibly happy in his final moments. Shinzaburo was buried next to Otsuyu. Now, the tale of Peony Lantern originates from China. However, before coming to Japan, it was modified so that it fits more with the Japanese audience. Otsuyu is a great case of sexually frustrated spirit, haunting the living world due to strong, unresolved romantic feelings. Airyo. This is a subtype that was created by Zach Davison in his excellent, very informative book, Yūrei, Ghost of Japan. This category is for ghosts that haunt the living world due to the feelings of love. So in this chapter, I took the liberty to divide it into two, the romantic love and maternal love. Although in the book, I believe Mr. Davison only refers to romantic love. Similar to hate, love is also a super strong emotion. If you are about to die and your last thoughts are the desperation of wanting to see your loved one, or desperation of wanting to save your child, then your spirit will become Airyo. The best example of Airyo would be Otsuyu. Otsuyu is also considered to be part of the Hone Onna gang. Hone Onna literally means bone woman. This refers to the part where the woman is already dead, and the man later finds out that he is banging a literal skeleton. Okiku, the last of the three great Yūrei of Japan. Okiku is a great example of a Jibakurei, which means earthbound spirit, and also what sets her apart from the other two that we talked about is that the legend of Okiku is said to be native from Japan. Okiku was a maid working for a samurai family, working as maids typically do, washing dishes, cleaning the house, laundry, and so on. One day she was accused of misplacing and losing one of the 10 most valuable plates that the samurai family have in their possession. However, in reality, one of the samurai from the family took and hid the plate to paint her as the culprit. The reason this guy did this was because he fell in love with Okiku but was rejected by her earlier. So this is kind of an incel revenge plot, kinda. The samurai family later finds out about the missing plate and they immediately believe the accusation that was thrown towards Okiku because they would rather believe the samurai than the lowly maid. So she was beaten, tortured, and bondage hung on a well. She succumbed to her injuries not long after, and it is said that her body was thrown into the well, which is a really strange thing to do because a well is your source of water, right? Anyways, the night after her death, the samurai family was shocked to the core by mysterious wailing and crying that came from the well. The tormented spirit of Okiku, bound by the well. Her Yūrei will rise from the well, then she will count from 1 to 9. After she reached 9, she will let out a horrifying scream that made the samurai household hairs stand on end. This counting reflects her cause of death, the missing plate. It is said that before she was apprehended by the family, in a state of panic and stress, she will count the plates again and again, and every time she found out that there was only 9 plates, she panicked even more. So after death, almost like a tape being replayed, her ghost counts the plate again and again, non-stop, every night. This proves too much for the family to face as they could not get a good night's sleep, so they called a monk to exorcise Okiku's ghost. Every ritual was done to appease Okiku's spirit, but every ritual did not work, and the spirit still haunts the well. So the monk sitting there, thinking really hard as to what he must do, when suddenly he has an idea. As he sits there listening to her counting from 1 till 9, and after she reaches 9, the monk then shouts 10. Then Okiku went silent. Suddenly a sigh of relief and Okiku's voice saying "finally" can be heard from the well. After this, the haunting stopped. Okiku probably has moved on to a better place. It is said that the very well that Okiku haunts is at Himeji Castle ground. You can go visit the well if you happen to be there one day. Jibakurei, or also known as the earthbound spirit, akin to a traditional kind of ghost. When people think about ghosts, it usually is a spirit which is bound to haunt a specific place or area, typically the place of their death, unable to move on. Also, Jibakurei do not come from a person who dies peacefully. Oftentimes, a Jibakurei manifests from a person who died tragically, murdered, died, or so on. Now let us explore further into each of the main types of Yūrei, starting with Onryo. Kohada Koheiji. You have probably seen this striking ukiyo-e. The title of this painting is called Kohada Koheiji by Katsushika Hokusai. Yes, the same Hokusai who created the most famous ukiyo-e, the Great Wave of Kanagawa. This painting, however, is gruesome and disturbing to look at. We see a grotesque skeletal figure with meat or muscle still intact at some parts of its body. It is peering through a mosquito net, it seems, trying to look at whoever is inside sleeping with hate and malice in its eyes. This painting is a painting adaptation of the story of Kohada Koheiji. The story of Kohada Koheiji follows the same footsteps as the story of its predecessor, Oiwa-san, but this time the gender is swapped. Kohada Koheiji was a Kabuki actor who was betrayed by his own wife and his friend. His wife cheated on him with his friend behind his back, which is really sad, to be honest. But one thing is that Kohada was a bit slow, and he did not suspect anything between the two of them. One day, his wife and her lover plotted to get rid of Kohada once and for all, so they devised a plan. The next day, the friend, aka the wife's lover, asked Kohada to go fishing with him, and Kohada agreed to accompany the friend. When they are on a boat in the middle of the swamp, where no one can see what they are doing, the friend, along with several of his accomplices who also joined the fishing trip, sneaked up on Kohada and murdered him. When they tried to dump the body, Kohada's corpse suddenly grabbed the friend's hand, which shocked him so much that he screamed out loud. One of the other accomplices brandished his sword and cut the hand clean from its arm. Soon after, the vengeful haunting ensued. The wife and the lover were haunted by a disturbing apparition of a rotting corpse. They both soon understand that this is Kohada's spirit seeking vengeance. They tried to ignore it, but day and night the disturbing apparition manifested itself at every corner of the house. The apparition even disturbed them during sleep, peering through their mosquito net, sticking in its hideous head to see them sleeping. This daily, hourly haunting proved too much for the couple, that the wife slowly lost her mind and soon after passed away, while the lover slowly fell sick and soon fell into a coma, never to wake again. Sakura Sogoro, the head of a village who fought for the well-being of his people against the corrupt and greedy lord who controlled the district. He fights for his people's right every day, but the lord will not care for them and keeps sucking the village wealth and income dry by increasing taxes and so on. One day, Sogoro decided to directly contact the shogun about the mistreatment that his lord inflicts on his people. However, when the lord later learns that Sogoro was contacting the shogun to report about his behavior, he decided to punish Sogoro and his whole family. Him and his wife were crucified while they watched all their 4 young sons be decapitated in front of him. The married couple endured torture for 3 whole days until they succumbed to their injuries. In his dying breath, he curses the Lord, vowing vengeance, and as his spirit leaves the body, his soulless eyes remain fixed at the Lord's castle. Then the vengeance hauntings came as soon as their death. Eerie lights were seen at the castle bedchamber, and evil laughter can be heard coming from the unknown, terrorizing the Lord's wife. Soon after, the apparition of Sogoro and his wife appears, still crucified on their crosses, hovering over the bed and terrifying the Lord's wife. Night after night, the terrifying apparition comes to haunt the Lord and his family, and the Lord could not stand the haunting anymore, and soon his sanity began to slip. One night, he accidentally murdered his mate, who he thought was a phantom. The ghost duo had the ability to warp the Lord's perception, as during the gathering of his retainers one day, he saw his retainers' faces as these horrifying and ghastly visions. One day, where the lords and other noblemen held a gathering at the shogun's castle, Lord Hotta at this point has been going insane, killed one of his fellow noblemen because he thought the dude was Sogoro. This led the shogun stripping the lord of his position and holdings. Now let us move on to Airyo. We talk about Otsuyu, and she is the best example of a romantic ghost. However, when it comes to maternal love, there are several ghosts which we can get into. Ubume is one such example, a spirit that is said to be from a mother who died during pregnancy. A mother who dies during pregnancy or childbirth was somewhat of a frequent case in medieval Japan. Because of this, it is no shock that a ghostly legend was born from this dreaded tragedy. Ubume is portrayed as a topless woman with pale white skin and long black hair. Her lower body is covered with white cloth or robe. One distinct feature is that her robe is filled with bloodstains. She is often portrayed as cradling a baby while her face is filled with pain and sadness. They haunt the world either seeking comfort or revenge. Her blood-soaked clothes show their connection to the lake of boiling blood in hell called Chi no Ike. You see, since Japan believes in an ancestor worship system that requires the new generation to worship the old ones, like I mentioned before, new children must be born in order to care for the graves and the spirit of the family that came before. So when a mother dies, usually the child inside her belly dies with her, thus murdering her child and ending her line. So because of this, the mother has committed a grave sin and she will be punished in hell. A very sad and bleak fate for a mother who died this way. Her hauntings are usually not something that can kill her victim. When a person encounters her, she will insist you to take her baby that she is cradling. If you take the baby from her, she will disappear and the baby becomes a pile of dried leaves, or rocks, or even a Jizo statue. Another maternal Yūrei is the Kosodate Yūrei, meaning the child-rearing ghost. Similar to Ubume, Kosodate Yūrei are ghosts of pregnant mothers. However, through some miracle, their child did not die with them and was born from her dead womb. The spirit of the mother manifests at night and takes care of her child, usually buying food, sweets, or toys for her child. The famous legend of Kosodate Yūrei goes like this. It's already the middle of the night, and the shopkeeper is packing things up to close his shop, when suddenly, a shabby, tired-looking woman with pale skin comes. She asks for a sweet candy and offers a coin to pay for it. Usually, shopkeepers will not entertain such late customers, but after seeing her, he did not have the heart to just ignore her, so he gave her a candy and took her coin. Then she returns into the night. Since then, the woman will come every night, always buying candy and mysteriously going away, vanishing into the night. The shopkeeper grew curious and concerned, and on the 6th night of her nightly candy buying streak, he stealthily followed the woman. The woman walked until she arrived at the cemetery. She stopped in front of a grave, then suddenly she vanished. The shopkeeper who was spying on her was shocked, and he ran back to his shop. The next morning, he informed the local villagers of what he had seen last night. They all went to the supposed grave where the woman disappeared. They decided to exhume the grave. And there she was, the very same woman that visits the shop. But what she holds in her arms is a still living baby. In the baby's mouth is the candy that was brought from the shop. When they search for the Rokumonsen, the 6 coffin coins are placed in graves to pay the tolls to the underworld. They couldn't find any. The shopkeeper then realized that the mother's ghost probably used those coins to buy the candies. So the villagers took the baby and the shopkeeper adopted the child. The Minatoya candy shop in Kyoto is selling Kosodate Ame, a candy inspired by this legend. This shop also claims to be the very shop that mother ghost visited to buy candy for her baby centuries ago. The stories of mother ghosts reflect the sad reality of mothers back in the day, the stress of pregnancy and the mortality rates of mothers back in the day where medical assistance was not even a thing yet. Jibakurei. Now when it comes to the earthbound spirit, the best modern example will be the urban legend of toilet-bound Hanako-san. People nowadays probably know this from many YouTube videos explaining about her, or even through manga or anime. Toilet-bound Hanako-san is a famous urban legend among school students, a ghost of a schoolgirl wearing a school uniform with red skirt and bobbed hair is said to haunt the 3rd stall of the girls' restroom. There are several origin stories of Hanako-san. One states that Hanako-san was a student that was killed in a World War II bombing raid. At the time of the bombing, she hid inside one of the stalls. Other version is much darker, a story of how Hanako was raped and murdered inside the third stall of the restroom. Whichever version you believed in, all of them had the same outcome. Hanako died tragically inside the toilet stall, and her spirit was doomed to haunt it for the rest of eternity. It is said that to encounter Hanako-san, one must knock 3 times on the door of the stall that Hanako-san is said to reside in, and call out her name. If you do that, the door of the stall will open, and Hanako-san will appear. She will then drag you inside the stall and kill you. The story of Hanako-san is a typical ritual-type urban legend, similar to Bloody Mary and such, where you have to perform a specific activity in order to summon the desired ghost. The legend of Hanako-san is a form of Kido Dameshi, a test of courage, where students will try to dare each other to perform the Hanako-san summoning ritual, and whoever does the challenge will be crowned the bravest among the class, something like that. The stories that I have told you in this video have so many different variations to it. I have read and did research throughout 3 to 4 books, and each has different details and subplots of the same legend. Sure, the main plot is still the same, but they are so much different in terms of the little plots and storytelling perspective. For example, I read the story of Otsuyu from 2 to 3 different sources, and each are pretty different from one another. Some add little more plot to the story while they also omit other details. I mean, that is the nature of folklore after all. Myths and legends have no solid shape and will change, bend, twist and transform across time and people. And for this video, I took the versions which are easier for me to adapt into YouTube videos. Plus, there are so many more ghostly Yūrei tales from Japan. To cover them all would probably stretch this video to 3 to 4 hours long. I encourage you to go have fun and do some of your own research. Research is always the fun part after all. I will probably make another Yūrei video just to continue the Yūrei list, but we'll see. When it comes to Yūrei stories, as you probably have realized, these stories are not just some spooky tale to be shared at a campfire. These stories are, in many ways, commentary and critique on social status of that time, particularly in Edo period, where women were mostly mistreated and ignored. In an era where wives were usually mistreated by their husbands, like in the story of Oiwa, or where the powerful and the noble ruled and oppressed the commoners below them, in the story of Sakura Sogoro and the story of Okiku. And these stories back in the day were enjoyed by commoners, as they see how Oiwa before death was a weak woman, now as a vengeful ghost capable in exacting her revenge to her husband in the most satisfying way. Same goes to Sakura Sogoro as well with his oppressive lord. To see the lowly classes, the wives and commoners rising up against those who wrong them, give the people who listen or watch these stories solace and strength, even though it is just from stories. It is weird that usually in ghost stories we root for the human character to succeed in banishing or destroying what evil entity haunts them, but in such Yūrei stories that I have shared with you, we root for these ghostly entities instead. We want them to succeed in their haunting and exacting revenge, and so on. Well, anyways, that is enough yapping from me. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Remember to live a good life, be good to your family and friends, treat your wife or husband well, lest you want them to return back as a vengeful Yūrei.